Surely one of the most fascinating and exciting developments of our age is the resurgence of Indigenous people of this land taking control of their destiny, charting a course of economic independence, changing the direction of our region. One of the leaders of this movement is our next guest. Graduated from SFU, 10 years later he was on the board. Most significantly, the board voted him chair and gave him the title Emeritus. 3 four-year terms as Squamish Council member, a leader in Indigenous developments, but one who constantly seeks traditional values, consulting with elders and members. Please welcome Chris Lewis. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Sam, and Hatsqueltanuyap to all of you, Siam's respected people. As mentioned, my ancestral name is Syeta'xtn, and thank you, Sam, for that excellent introduction. I'm here to talk to you about Indigenous resurgence around planning and economic development, and I'm going to focus on our project at Senakw, which is one of our ancient villages on the south side of Burrard Street Bridge. Senakw translates into inside the bay, so it's a geographical reference in terms of how it got its place name. And I also, on behalf of the Squamish people, want to welcome you to Kumkumalai, which is the place of Vancouver. Can everyone say Kumkumalai? It means the place of giant maple trees, and it's interesting now we're in a place of giant cement and concrete trees, and so it's quite symbolic and metaphoric. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Senakw around how it's important to the history of Canada and to the history of the Squamish Nation people. And just really want to think about how Senakw represents a moment in our history and a significance not only for the Squamish Nation, but all of Canada and Vancouver proper. It's an opportunity on how to demonstrate Squamish Nation and Indigenous values through meaningful reconciliation and responding to climate change, and also creating a solution for the housing crisis that we all face. We focus on Indigenous excellence by being the largest Indigenous-led city building initiative in Canada that we know. And we're also going to bring our traditions and our customs forward around how we design this project. We're also going to provide hundreds, if not thousands, of opportunities for our people that should be the builders of this project. And it's going to be sustainable. It's going to have net zero carbon housing development, because we are, as Indigenous people, facing climate change everywhere we turn. It's also going to have district energy and fed by the massive metro sewer pipe that goes through the property. We're going to harness heat from that so that we can power the project. We're going to use timber like we always did with our traditional buildings and incorporate that in a modern context. And we're going to provide over 6,000 houses to the Vancouver market to help with the housing crisis. What's interesting about this is on our reserve land. So it's not subject to City of Vancouver zoning, and we can move as quick as we want or as slow as we want. And it's really focused on rental to ensure that we're looking at the market, and just like Alain talked about, we're letting the market dictate in terms of how we build. So just a little bit of a project overview here. It's quite symbolic. Every time I look at this picture, you can see the great density of Kumkumalai looking at the proposed density of Senakw, and how it's symbolic, and how as Squamish people we are rising to once again be city builders in our traditional lands, bringing forward our teachings and our innovation to a city that needs it, in a city where we want to be good neighbors. We want to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. But in order to get there, we need to understand the past. And I just really like to show this slide because the picture on the top is the original surveyed reserve of 80 acres in the late 1800s. So we had 80 acres to live on. And throughout the history, that slowly got expropriated away for railway, road right-of-ways, bridge right-of-ways, and then it was completely expropriated in 1913. And my ancestors got put on a barge and barged over to North Vancouver, and the reserve was expropriated. Luckily, after 30, almost 40 years of litigation, we got 10.48 acres left, which you can see now, in which the project is on. This is what we want to do. This is 12 buildings, construction hopefully this year, but I'm hearing probably next year in relations to this. And it's going to incorporate who we are and where we come from. And really the market is driving this. Rental vacancy rates are almost at zero in Kitsilano, and we continue to move forward. But we also want to provide attainable, affordable housing and housing for our own people as well. And we want to bring our people home to a village where we've largely been alienated from. So what does nation building look like? It looks like a built environment that redefines the landscape of Vancouver. It incorporates the culture of the Indigenous peoples of the land. And it incorporates new transportation infrastructure so we don't have to rely on the car. We're looking at investing over $100 million in a new transit infrastructure system through a streetcar partnership that would connect the project to not only Granville Island, but to the Canada line at Olympic Village so that we can move people in and out without the car. And then we're also, as I said, looking at innovative carbon neutral district energy projects as well. And how does Senakw define a new generation of reconciliation and leadership? As you can see, the nation is moving from a passive landlord position to an active developer and investor in our own lands. We're looking at historic partnerships with all levels of government and the industry and development industry here in Vancouver. And we're also looking at complete economic independence as a nation. When we've done some of the market analysis around getting E&Y to look at some of the numbers in terms of what this would look like on leased land, because we're not going to give the land away. We just got it back. So we're going to lease it out for 120 years, and that's looking like anywhere from $13 to $18 billion of return back to the nation, which creates that economic independence for us to do new and more innovative things. And it really creates an opportunity for our people to build this. So when they drive over the Broad Street Bridge and these towers are all done, they tell their children and their grandchildren, I built that, I helped build it. And that's the legacy that we're trying to create here. As I mentioned, this isn't a typical zoning process. In First Nation Squamish country, we had to go to the citizens of the Squamish Nation, all 3,000 voting members, and ask them for permission. And they voted 87% in favor of this project. And they said, go and do it. Do it now, do it fast. And so we're moving as quick as we can. Just a little bit more here on sustainability, which I already talked about. I love showing these pictures, so. And then really looking at timber, and I know timber markets are real high, but we're the original timber builders of this land. We used to build 400-foot long houses in Jericho and in Senakw, so why don't we do it here but go the other way? Rather than horizontal, we're going to go vertical. Again, this is putting 6,000 units onto the market in a very short time to help with Vancouver's housing crisis. And who are we attracting? We're attracting the young, the bright people that are working for Microsoft and Apple, the people in downtown, or in Gastown, Railtown, Yaletown, Mount Pleasant, Broadway Corridor, and False Creek Flats. There's so many innovative people there that want to experience an authentic Indigenous experience, and we're going to provide that community for them moving forward. And why does this all matter? Over the past 10 years, Vancouver has brought an average of 750 rental units per year onto the market. Senakw looks at bringing over 6,000 units onto the market within 5 to 10 years, which is 700 is going to be affordable. There's going to be many for our Squamish Nation members as well. And ultimately, this project stands to offer an inspiring solution for our housing needs, meaningful response to the climate change crisis that we face, and moving towards Indigenous reconciliation amongst Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous peoples, but also as Indigenous peoples to the land. We need to reconcile ourselves with the land and give back to the land what the land has given to us since the beginning of time. So thank you. I think that's my 5 minutes. OCM.